Hi, everyone. Pastor Ralph here. You know, the state of the world right now has me thinking about just how we have this mindset of scarcity when it comes to things that aren't scarce. You know, we live often by finite resources, something that's going to run out, right? Like most of our day has a limited amount of time. Our money is always limited, and we're trying to decide what to buy and what not to buy based on how much we'll have left, because we know once we spend it all, it'll be gone. We have a limited amount of energy that often runs out. We have a limited amount of food before we have to eat the food again. And so oftentimes when our lives are driven by a scarcity mentality, we tend to treat others with the same mentality. Like if we go beyond our comfort zone and share love or encouragement with someone else, there might not be enough for us when we need it. And the interesting thing is how much we apply that to God's love as well. In Psalm 136, David repeats over and over and over again, God's love never fails. And he doesn't mean that there's a battle going on and God's love wins every time. He means God's love never runs out, that there's an unlimited resource. It's not like gas in your car or ice cream in your freezer. If you eat all that ice cream of God's love, more ice cream shows up. That's just how God's love works. You know, and the more that we spread God's love, especially with people who are hurting or in need, the more we find we're actually doing what God's love moves us and is intended to do. And yet, we see throughout the Bible that as people share God's love, they get chastised and beaten for it. Peter and Paul in the book of Acts, for instance, they share that Christ's love came for the Jewish people and also for other crowds, like Gentiles. And Peter and Paul are beaten and imprisoned because they told people who were already religious and already knew God's love was for them. They told them that there's more people who have God's love, and those people rioted. And you got to wonder if they thought that adding more people would take away from their slice of the pie of God's love, or if they felt entitled to more of God's love because they were born that way. God's love isn't about who you are and who you're not, or how much or how little you have. God's love is infinite and for all people. Just by your birthright, God loves you. And telling someone God loves them, or that you care about them, or that they matter, doesn't take away from how much God absolutely loves you. It actually, sharing love affirms that God's love's working through you, because all of what Jesus came to do and most of the Bible tells us to do is to share God's love, to go and make disciples, not to hoard it for ourselves or make sure we have enough to get through our lives, but to share that love of God with all people. And Christ came to share love with all people. And a lot of times he specifically spent time, and we specifically read stories in the Gospels about Jesus being with people who are the absolute most in need. Those who are oppressed, Jesus goes to. Those who are widowed, who are orphaned, who are discriminated against, Jesus spends time with them. Those who need healing, Jesus is with them. The Samaritan woman, the leper, the blind, the zealots, Jesus spends time with them, because they're outcast by the rest of the world, because they're treated unfairly, because they're hurting. And when Jesus does those things, he doesn't say, I'm taking away from what the religious crowd gets and giving some to these people who are in need. He doesn't say he's taking away God's love from anyone else. And he doesn't say that it means God cares any less about you. God's love is an overflowing, never-ending stream of life-giving water for all people. That's what the Bible tells us. And so why do we act like saying other people matter? It takes away from something, you know? I want to encourage you to reach out today to somebody who might be hurting or in need, someone who you might have not talked to in a while. Make sure they know God loves them, whether you tell them directly or whether just a phone call and telling them you care is all you need to do to remind them that someone's thinking about them and God has them in his heart. You know, and I say this because there's this controversy over language that saying Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter takes away from how much anybody else matters. Saying those things doesn't take away from how much you matter. And it certainly doesn't say that they're the only people that matter. Saying Black Lives Matter is just like Jesus going to people who are hurting and saying, I haven't forgotten about you and God loves you. My presence and affirmation should prove that to you. And it doesn't mean that nobody else matters. It doesn't take away from anybody else's love. It doesn't mean that you enable evil in the world. It just means that you're telling someone who needs to know God's love that you love them. God is there for them, and Jesus came for them as well. So I want you to consider that today, especially as you're reaching out to people around you, not to argue so much about who matters and who doesn't matter, but to go to the people who need to hear it. Because to God, yes, all people matter, but some people need to hear it right now much more than others. And your blessings and your safety give you a special opportunity to be able to share God's love with those people in need. Thanks for listening, friends. Keep looking up.